years since the Arab Spring first began, the Middle East and North Africa remains leaderless. The old sources of power and influence at both the domestic and international level are waning. The region requires regional and national leaders capable of meeting the urgent political, economic, security, and environmental challenges at hand.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Post-Arab Spring Leadership Deficit Session. My name is Intaek. I'm a research fellow at the Jeju Peace Institute. It is an honor and pleasure to moderate this important panel on post-Arab Spring political situation in the Middle East. I'd like to thank you, the Asan Policy Institute, for this opportunity. And also, I'd like to thank you, Asan Institute, for the bravery, for the courage to invite non-native speaker of English to be a moderator of this session. I think, Dr. Zhang, you will have brave son. Today, we are delighted to have distinguished panelists from Europe, America, and Middle East. In my mind, Arab Spring is multidimensional, complex phenomena, and it takes more than one person and one perspective to understand the richness and complexity of it. I think today's panel is ideal group of experts representing different experience and perspectives. The first speaker, as listed in the program, is Mr. Christian Berger, who is European Union External Action Service Director. Next speaker is Mr. Mohammad Elhalawani. You need to help me with Arabic.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Who is Second Secretary in the Embassy of the Arab Republic of Egypt to the Republic of Korea. The third speaker, the last speaker, but not the least, is Ms. Ellen Laipson. You need to also help me with pronouncing your name, who is the President and CEO of the Stimson Center. So I'd like to welcome each speaker for being with us. And without further delay, I'd like to ask panelists to give their presentation. Each panelist has about 10 minutes. According to the program, according to the instruction I received, each panelist has 5 minutes, but I'd like to increase the time to 10 minutes. Also, I'd like to ask each panelist to tell briefly about yourself and also the institution you belong to so that the audience can have better understanding where you are coming from. So let me invite Mr. Berger to make the first presentation.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you to the Asan Center for inviting us to talk about the Arab Spring. I think your challenge as a non-native speaker to moderate this panelist is nothing compared to a non-native speaker on the panel to whom you have to listen. So I hope I can make myself understood and give a presentation of what we are doing in the Middle East. But as you wanted me to say something about myself, I'm the regional director in the European External Action Service. I mean, people maybe here don't know what the European External Action Service is. Basically the foreign service of the European Union. We just can't call it that way. But it is the foreign service of the European Union, with 140 delegations worldwide, including many in the Middle East, and with a large program of support to the Middle East and a large involvement in the Middle East. And I've spent many years working for the United Nations and for other organizations in the Middle East, in Jerusalem, in Gaza, Damascus, Beirut, Cairo, and other places. But I think enough of introduction. Let me just say a few words where we stand and what we do against the topic of this panel, leadership. And I see a leadership question on 3 levels: the international leadership, the regional leadership, and the leadership in the country. And I think the questions that you have are more or less following that pattern. So let me start with international leadership, and I only want to explain what the European Union is doing. I don't want to claim that the European Union is exercising leadership in the region, but I just want to explain because as neighbors to the Middle East, of course, we are challenged to take some action when the whole region is going through very difficult changes, and we are trying to be as supportive as possible. But let me go back to the origin of the revolution and the slogans that we heard in the beginning, and they were mainly justice, dignity, social security, and security. And I just want to dwell a minute on the slogan of dignity, because we're trying to respond to the various notions of dignity here. One is political dignity. What does it mean? It means that the individuals in a country are trying to redefine their relationship with the state or with the regime or with the government. This is something the Europeans have gone through more than 100 years ago in 1848. Again, the very same notion. Who are we as individuals? How do we ascertain our rights against the government and the regime? And this is exactly what is happening at the moment, and we are trying to be supportive as much as we can without being intrusive. I mean, people have to find their own way and have to come up with their own constitutions, their own legal systems, their own electoral systems. So we can help and assist and provide, we can provide incentives, we can provide information, we can provide expertise, and that is happening across the region. It doesn't mean, however, that when we are engaging with these new regimes, the new governments, the new political parties in the region, that we do this at a cost-free level. I mean, we have, of course, our own values and we have our own views, and we are trying to make sure that they come across without, of course, as I said before, imposing, because people have to choose their own structures. The second element of dignity is socio-economic dignity, better jobs, income, food for the family, and this is a major problem, particularly in countries that have severe economic problems, or that a country that are very large, like Egypt, and I hope we will hear from our colleague here about the situation there, and trying to help the government to improve the socio-economic situation. Here we have been extremely active, I would say, as European Union. We set up new support structures. We call it a task force. We're trying to bring together all European actors, the member states of the European Union, the banks of the European Union, the private sector of the European Union, and try to help our partner countries. We have had such task force meetings with Tunisia, with Jordan, and just recently a very big one with Egypt, where we managed to bring about 150, 200 CEOs of big European companies to Cairo to start up business again. President Morsi keeps telling us he wants three things from the European Union. He wants to bring tourists back, he wants investment, and he wants the assets that have been frozen in Europe to be returned, repatriated to Egypt. However, there are also problems. I mean, we cannot. It's not an easy ride. I mean, just to give you an example, we were in Cairo with a visit to Cairo about 2-3 weeks ago. The evening when the Coptic church in Cairo was attacked and was burning. So it's very difficult to bring investors and to bring tourists into a city when this is on CNN or on any other TV channel, because this really keeps people from coming. So it's very important that the situation calms down, and it's very important that there is stability, and it's important that there will be a transition, a proper transition on a democratic path. At the same time, we also have a special representative of the European Union appointed who helps those countries in the transition phase, and we have doubled and tripled our efforts in support to those countries, and we have tried to focus our response to the situation post-Arab Spring. And that happens on three levels: on access to markets in the European Union, so give a better chance for the economy; on mobility, this is what people want. They want to travel, they want to come to the European Union, so it's an issue of granting visas. And the third one is to increase our development cooperation. So in the year 2013, we are providing about 1.6 billion euros in terms of development cooperation to North Africa and the Middle East. So this is very broadly on what the European Union does as an international actor on the ground, apart from, as I said, trying to engage with the new regimes and embrace the the path to democracy and to a political transition. Briefly on the regional leadership. I mean, there are many choices. I mean, look around. I mean, you have Egypt itself that has always been a strong leader of the Arab world, and because of what they're going through at the moment, I mean, that leadership cannot be exercised, although you can see it, particularly in foreign policy, that the president is trying. I mean, he was very successful in brokering a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel in November last year. He has been trying, or is trying to and I'm sure you heard this yesterday in the discussion on Syria, to bring together regional powers to work on the Syria issue, together with Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Iran. So there are very strong signals from Egypt that it wants to retake the traditional role as a leader in the Arab world. Equally, you have a very strong involvement of Turkey at the moment by supporting what is going on in the region, by being present at all meetings that deal, for example, with Syria, but also meetings of the Arab League, despite that they're not a member of the Arab League. So you have Turkey also coming back, and particularly Turkey's strong economic efforts and success in the last 10 years, but also the way they have dealt with political Islam as a political party in Turkey. This is seen by many colleagues in the Arab world as positive examples. Then you have, of course, the Arab League itself that we have engaged now very intensively with in the last year, in the last 2 years. A league that you can't recognize anymore, that has changed completely to what it was only 3-4 years ago. A league that has taken very strong position in the case of Libya, a league that has taken a strong position in the case of Syria and on other issues. So this is a body of the Arab world that is showing very strong political performance at the moment and strong leadership on some of these issues. Lastly, let me come to the issue of domestic leadership. And that is something I think we don't have the answer yet. I mean, there is a democratic political struggle going on between the Islamic forces, the Muslim Brotherhood in many countries, which have emerged from elections as political leaders, but are still challenged by the liberal forces, by civil society. You see a lot of backlash at the moment because of the legislation that is being proposed by people in power. But you see at the same time, you hear the people who have come particularly from the Muslim Brotherhood side, fear that if they don't stay in power, they might end up where they came from, namely in jail or worse. So this is a struggle that is going on at the moment, and what we try to achieve is to put this on a proper democratic path. So this goes through democratic elections, but it can't be only elections. It has to be, as we call it, deep democracy, meaning it's not only going to a ballot box and tick a party, but it is more than that. It's rule of law, it's good governance, it's human rights, respect for human rights, is a functional legal system. This is all what you need in order to attain the aims of the revolution that we saw in 2011. I think I'll leave it as that as an introduction.
Yeah, thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Elhalawani. He represents not just different region. He came from Middle East, where it all began. But I also think that he represents a different generation, at least from mine. As a college student, I experienced the democratization of South Korea back in 1980s. Mr. Elhalawani is currently experiencing Arab Spring, which is not over yet. So there is a generation, not just regional difference, but also generational difference. So I'd like to invite Mr. Elhalawani to share his views and also his perspectives with us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Han. And first of all, I have actually to thank Asan Institute as probably one of the most prestigious think tanks here in Korea, and most particularly Dr. Jang for inviting me and for giving me this opportunity to talk about Arab Spring, the phenomenon that I haven't witnessed myself and I have missed because I've been here for 3 years and a half. And I have only 5 months to go. The Arab Spring, as the Western media prefers to put it, actually, even this coinage, this name, is not very much preferable in the Arab world, because because it insinuates some sort of foreign hidden agenda or something like that. People feel that in Egypt, I would like to say that the problem that we do not have this amount of self-confidence that we can make it ourselves. So again, when you mention the Arab Spring, its connotation is not that very positive or constructive for the people in the Arab world, and most particularly in Egypt. The thing is that is there any leadership deficit for the post-Arab Spring? First of all, I have to say that the revolutions or the uprisings that took place in the Arab world, starting in Tunisia and then to Egypt and the likes, is still in the process of making. It hasn't taken any shape yet. Actually, people feel somehow now disoriented because they cannot conceive, they cannot understand what happened. We felt at some time that the regime is absolutely strong, is iron-fisted to the extent that it's going to be endless, it's going to be forever. Nobody can just move it away. What happened? Just all of a sudden, it just crumbled. So people, though they felt that they are very happy and victorious, they now in a state of disorientation, because the question that you may hear every now and then in the Egyptian street, that where are we heading to? What's happening? What is the next step? Nobody can tell. The whole process actually, to some extent, was not expected. To some others, it was absolutely expected. Because it was some sort of accumulation of corruption, accumulation of pressure. So the normal result, normal outcome is some sort of revolution, some sort of outburst. But again, what happened that people now, they are not very happy, as my colleague Dr. Laipson just put it now, that it seems that people in the Arab world are not that happy, or every partner seems that it's not up to his expectations. The thing is that 10 years back, a decade back, all the threads were leading to some sort of explosion. The whole fractions of the society, the thing that all the rulers started to age on their seats. What they call it gerontocracy or something like that. The rule of elder people. All that led to some extent to some sort of change. It had to be happen, whether it started in Tunisia or not. It had to happen. What happened within the political economy of Mubarak's fall, transformation of the Egyptian political economy and how it brought the demise of the Egyptian regime. Transformation shouldn't be reduced to a certain economic crisis and the rising social discontent, although it certainly includes such a variable. In fact, under Mubarak, the state has lost much of easy public revenues. All the society was complaining of dire need and dire economic problem. The rising prices of everything was just leading to the people's discontent. So now, after the revolution just happened, even some people, they believe that it was not a revolution. Probably you can't call it uprising, or you can't just call it just like a movement. Other, they believe that it's a revolution and it's gonna bear fruits very soon. Now, the Egyptian state, which tended to be very centralized for millennia of years, is in trouble. The leadership itself is not very much to the expectations of the people. The people now, they started to believe that Islamic or political Islam is something contentious. It's not as people were thinking of, and they have now to rethink again of it. The whole elements of the society is just playing out in a way that is not conclusive. I think that the Egyptian revolution is still in the making. Lots of things still to happen. What is happening now? What is taking place now is not the final stage. People still talking about another phases of the revolution. Revolution just probably in its beginning, and lots of things are awaiting or expected to happen. I just leave it to here, and I hope that I made things a little bit more ambiguous. Thank you.
Thank you. It was very interesting to hear Mr. Elhalawani struggling to pronounce Ms. Ellen Laipson's name correctly. I think it's a true joy and evidence that we are having an international conference with panelists coming from different backgrounds. And I like this kind of conference where accents are very obvious and sometimes they misunderstand each other. And even more enjoyable would be when panelists disagree with each other almost on every point. So I will give you, the panelists, the chance to disagree with each other after Ms. Ellen Laipson's presentation.
Thank you, Professor Han. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, and I thought the topic of leadership was particularly suitable for the Asan Institute, which is, I know this has been a theme of how Asan thinks about Korea's rising role, and one of the issues that really is a global issue, a global challenge, is making sure that leadership is in place and is competent and capable and legitimate. And I think it is correct, I don't disagree with the premise of the panel that what the Arab world is suffering from right now is a leadership deficit. But I also want to shade a little bit the question, because I think, as Christian Berger said, there's not a total absence of leadership. There's sometimes competition for leadership, etc. But certainly for the Arab states in transition, what we see is unstable systems that have not yet found leadership that is quite strong enough to face the demands of these societies that are in turmoil. You invited us to say a little bit about the organizations that we represent, and I just want to offer a sentence or two about the Stimson Center. We're a think tank that looks at problems of international security. So our work on the Middle East tends to be regional in focus. So we are interested in broad questions of regional peace and security. And so we're interested in the interactions among the Arab countries, those that are in transition and those that are not. And how do we understand the Middle East system, if you will, or lack of a single unifying system in the Middle East? And I think that is somehow relevant to this discussion of leadership. We also try to look at issues very much in a non-ideological and pragmatic and problem-solving way. So our work on the Arab states in transition is really focused on promoting some of the smart, big policy ideas that we think would help the transitions, particularly with a focus on economic integration, an issue that I think the Europeans in particular also have a lot to contribute to. So when I thought about the question of the leadership deficit, I thought it would be useful to just remind ourselves that the Middle East in recent history has been known more for an excess of leadership, not an insufficiency of leadership. And so I think we do want to remind ourselves that these are societies that have come out of a very long period of very domineering, top-down, authoritarian politics where there was very little room for personal expression or for political action. If we look just at the three countries of North Africa in transition, Egypt, Libya, and Tunisia, it became almost comical, some of the myths and the stories of the total dominance of the political space by one individual and the entourage around that individual. One small story that I can tell that just to kind of illustrate how it does become almost comic was on one of my many trips to Tunisia. The Tunisian president, Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, was giving awards to some of the top cultural figures in Tunisia, artists, filmmakers, poets, etc. And the celebration in the newspaper the next day was a series, 20 pictures of the president's face and the back of the person getting the award. So, I mean, this says something about a political culture in which you could not somehow not focus on the president as the president was giving the awards. It was all about him and not about the people receiving the awards. So let's just remind ourselves that part of what we're seeing, if it's a leadership deficit or a vacuum or the limitations and shortcomings of the new leadership, that there's even an element of relief that period of larger-than-life political figures who used up all of the political space, who took all of the oxygen out of the system. You know, for some Arabs, I'm sure there is still a little bit of satisfaction that that era is ending. It's not ending everywhere in the Arab world, and I think we have to remind ourselves that in more Arab states than not, we still have the old system. We have the incumbent regimes, whether they are monarchies or secular regimes that in many cases came out of military dictatorships like Algeria. So the cult of personality is over. The pendulum has swung in some of these countries from very dominant political figures to an uncertainty about who will emerge as the next generation of leadership. And so I think we want to step back and just appreciate that now people have a chance to test and consider different candidates for leadership in these countries that are still going through an incremental process of political change. It's not like they flipped the switch and now there's a new president for life. They are going through interim governments while they write constitutions, have national referenda, and before we see any long-term new leadership. This is at least the case for the three countries, Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt. But I wanted to, my second sort of large point is that we're not talking just about a leadership deficit, we're also talking about the who is led deficit. So we have to remember that leaders need people who want to be led, and what we are seeing in the Middle East is a citizenship deficit. People do not yet know what are realistic expectations of the relationship between society and government. Basically, what we're seeing in these countries in transition is that the old pact, the old social pact between the leaders and the led has been exposed as obsolete, as not functioning anymore, but we don't yet know what that new pact will look like. And what we do see from the courageous students of Tahrir Square, from the fruit vendors and labor unions and middle-aged housewives of Tunisia, from how much of these societies have been mobilized and stimulated to get out into the streets and to be part of the process of change, they still have a lot of learning to do about the role of the citizen, how to petition your government, how to make your voice be heard. And so we should not focus just on who gets elected to be prime minister and what political parties are emerging, but it's also the whole society is learning new roles and new relationships. So I do think that this, and I really do believe that this concept of citizenship, that some Arab intellectuals, Elhalawani and others, have talked a lot about this, the development of the concept of citizenship in the Arab world would also help overcome some of the societal cleavages that have been exposed since the removal of dictators, whether they are ethnic, sectarian, etc. So we should be concerned not just about the deficit of leadership, but also the deficit of the role, the rights, the responsibilities of those who are led. Clearly, there's enormous pent-up demand. My observation to Mohammad was that I feel in Egypt that nobody is happy now. Nobody has what they want, whether it's the people who led the revolution, the Islamists who now feel a little bit paranoid that nobody appreciates them either. The military doesn't have everything that they were used to and that they wanted, and that you have a society that is in turbulence and nobody is confident of how to get to a new equilibrium point. So, and you know, I think we know from other democratic transitions, whether it's Korea or Indonesia or Latin America, that the institutional change and the culture, the deep, enduring cultural change takes at least a decade, if not a generation, to fall into place. So I would like to just warn against too much pessimism. I think we want to be careful to not assume that just because our snapshot of the present tends to be very dark or very unstable and uncertain, we should not judge yet that these Arab revolutions were a failure. To the contrary, we should appreciate and try to stay neutral for as long as we can, that it's too early to judge what these transitions will look like, as they play out over a decade or more. Like Christian Berger, I had a reaction to the leadership question by thinking of leadership not just at the national level. And I guess I did feel that it was important to say that we should not overstate the absence of leadership. We are seeing some figures step up to the plate, whether it's Prime Minister Erdogan of Turkey, President Morsi himself of Egypt, who I think is struggling a bit to be an effective president of Egypt, but still has ambition for Egypt to play a leadership role in the region. And I would even cite the interim and now former Prime Minister of Tunisia, Hamidi Jebali, who comes out of the Islamist party, the Nahda, the dominant political party right now in Tunisia. But he very much aspired to be the kind of competent, modern, inclusive leader of a modernizing state, it's a poignant story because even within less than 2 years of the transition in Tunisia, he became marginalized by the polarization of politics, including even within the ruling party. So, my point is that he had some of the attributes of leadership that we would want to see. He emerged out of the Islamist party, but he said, I represent all Tunisians, and tried very hard to keep the coalition that included secular parties and the Islamist party together. Wanted very much, after there was a period of turmoil over the assassination of a political figure, to move to a technocratic government in Tunisia, and his own party wasn't ready for that. They still had a winner-take-all mentality. They did not respond to his entreaties for a reasonable transition or a reasonable management of the crisis. So there are individuals who understand what leadership is required, who have themselves very, appropriate instincts of how to keep the situation within countries and between countries from spinning out of control, and they do not always prevail. But I do think we should, because of the interest in the sort of regional picture, we have to bear in mind that there is now a kind of that higher level of leadership competition is happening across not just the Arab world, but if we bring in Turkey and Iran, what we see is a kind of reinventing the international system of the Middle East. We don't know yet which formations and coalitions of countries are going to work together. I did very much admire President Morsi of Egypt's initiative to get 4 countries Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Turkey together collectively to try to resolve the Syria crisis. Forget the EU, forget Brussels, forget Washington, forget Moscow. Would it have been possible for the four sort of natural leaders of the Middle East region to be able, and I thought it was a very honorable and courageous move, and it was our friends the Saudis who I think felt very conflicted about being in a coalition with Iran at the time that caused the initiative to not succeed. But those four countries, if we think about those four countries, we see a very interesting new paradigm for regional leadership. And how do we think about leadership at the regional level? We do know that the existing institutions, the Gulf Cooperation Council, the Arab League, the Islamic Conference, none of them are self-evident and obvious natural problem solvers in under current circumstances. So I guess my last just point to, let me just say again that what we are certainly seeing is that the parties that in the early phase emerged as the strongest single parties, whether it's the Muslim Brothers in Egypt or the Nafta Party in Tunisia. Libya is actually an even more interesting case because the Islamists did not come out on top, even though they are probably also one of the larger political forces. That what we've seen in these cases is that the parties themselves are very internally divided. And there really is, and I guess this is in a way my last point, we should not underestimate how deep some of the societal cleavages and how that this is still early days for these parties to think at the national level. They are used to being in opposition with very little authority, very little legitimate power to do anything. And what we found is that once given the reins of governance, they were deeply conflicted about, and within each of these Islamist parties, we are seeing leadership struggles. In the case of Egypt, one observation that some experts that have followed the Muslim Brothers for a long time are making is that when Mubarak cracked down on the Muslim Brothers in 2005, 2006, a lot of people were thrown into jail, and the realignment of the party leadership at that time pushed the party in a more conservative direction. So what might have been a Muslim Brother party that would have thought at the national level, tried to be very inclusive, consider the minority rights, etc., those folks had been marginalized because of their struggle with the Mubarak government, and that what we're seeing now is a more conservative and doctrinaire and rigid Muslim Brotherhood, and they are not proving to be very effective in power. So my last point is that we need to have strategic patience. We need to understand that these political forces really had no prior experience in making the hard decisions that governing Arab countries with severe economic problems requires, but that in the long run, we cannot assume that just these national political institutions will be sufficient to resolve some of the deeper societal cleavages and underlying problems that are now exposed in the Arab world. We are seeing what I believe are fairly deep culture wars about the status of women, the role of religion in public life, the rights of minorities, the sectarian identity issues that are surfacing. These are pretty profound and enduring challenges that just watching the political contestation of political parties alone will not be able to adequately address. We are talking about the requirements of kind of deeper societal reconciliation that I think so far, let me just go back to the theme of the panel, the weakness and the limitations of the new leadership in the countries in transition, I think is proving that these deeper problems are beyond their capacity to manage right now. Thank you.
Thank you. As I prepare for this session, a saying came to my mind, which was that bad government may be better than no government at all. And that may be the question many Arabs are questioning themselves at this point. And that concerns me, actually, because leadership deficit may cause regression back to authoritarianism. One benefit of having a small number of panelists is that we can have more time for discussion. So we have about 30 minutes left. So I'd like to divide our time into two parts. The first part, I'd like to go over the guiding questions together with the panelists. The guiding questions are very demanding, actually. They require not just analysis, but also, in my mind, they require a lot of fortune-telling exercise, because they ask you to name who will fill the leadership vacuum, who will be the person in charge or institutions in charge to guide the development in the region. So by going back to these guiding questions one by one with the panelists, my intention is to highlight differences and similarities among the panelists, so that the audience and all of us here can better understand how complex and multidimensional Arab Spring is to us. So if you allow me, I'd like to ask each panelist to give your view on some of the list of questions I'd like to pose. I mean, I'm reading from the original list. Before we begin, I'd like to ask you whether you agree with the premise, with the idea that Arab world is now leaderless. If you agree, then I will ask you guiding questions one by one. If you do not agree, then I'd like to hear your explanation why you disagree. So the basic premise of this session, or this panel discussion, is that post-Arab, there is a leadership deficit in the post-Arab Spring Middle East. Mr. Berger, do you agree?
First of all, I have to disappoint you that I don't disagree with the other panelists. I have a few things to add, if you want, and complement to what they were saying. On your leadership question, and particularly on who will take the leadership, again I have to disappoint you, but because my crystal ball broke at the airport when it dropped in the security check. So I can't really tell you who is going to be the leaders, but I agree it's not only an issue of leadership. The notion of, I find this expression very good, the lack of citizenship, I think is very important that we look into this. And I'll just give you one example. What does it mean to be opposition? I think there is no idea and no concept of what it means to be in opposition. Neither the government knows what an opposition can do and should do and give it a comfort space to work in, nor the opposition in some places is working in a responsible way. And both of them don't understand that in a democratic process, the roles can be reversed. So you better already now, when you're in power, you treat the opposition the proper way and the other way around. I think this is something that we still have to see emerge in the region.
So, you're saying that not just leadership deficit, there is a followership deficit as well, because because it's not very clear to them what it means to be in the opposition.
I think there's a very strong notion in general to be leaders, but one of the problems is that too many people want to be leaders.
So in a way, there may be actually leadership surplus, not leadership deficit. That is,
I wouldn't say surplus, because that would assume that there are already leaders. I'm just saying many people want to be leaders.
Okay, Mr. Elhalawani.
Well, for me, actually, I may say that I disagree.
You disagree?
I disagree. The thing is that we have actually to agree, first of all, about the definition of leader or leadership. The conventional sort of leader is not anymore there. The world changed, and the sort of collectivism is on the rise in everything. Starting from who is the inventor of the personal computer. If you ask me about who's the inventor of the telephone, I would say Graham Bell. But if you ask me who's the inventor of probably the laptop, I don't know. It's sort of the age, the era that we live in, and does not actually entail or necessitate sort of a conventional leader. I can tell you very frankly that the leader is there in the Arab world. The leader is the people themselves. What happened in the Arab Spring that they introduced for the first time probably in the history of Egypt at least, the people and their role and their say in the public sphere. The Egyptian history probably stretches back to millennia of years, and the pharaoh, the ruler, was everything. It was even more than Ben Ali. Ben Ali was still a human being. The pharaoh was not even half of God, but to some extent was the God himself. So people used to worship him. What happened after the Arab Spring? What happened after the advent of the Egyptian revolution? That the people introduced themselves, imposed themselves on the scene, to the extent that it's sort of over imposition, over action for the people. They have to rationalize a little bit their role, and I think that would take a little bit of time and experience. So I think that we do not suffer any sort of insufficiency of leadership. It's another way, another sort of leadership that we are witnessing now. The leader is the people themselves. The people decides. Sometimes they are not very apt, they are not very good actually at deciding, but they have to adapt themselves to that process. That they are in the scene, they are who are governing, who are deciding, who are going to be responsible for their decisions. So leadership is there and leaders are there, but probably in different shape.
Well, this is very interesting, and one implication from the theme of this panel is that there was a leadership prior to Arab Spring. Well, there was dictatorship, but I don't know whether there was leadership. I mean, leadership involves sharing vision for the future and sharing a profit with the people, and there was no such a thing. So the dichotomy between the notion we have that now we have leadership deficit, whereas we may not, may be in itself can be very controversial and need to be questioned. Well, Ms. Ellen Laipson, you answered many of the questions already, and you already made it very clear that there is a leadership deficit. That is your view, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, leadership shortcomings is really a global issue. It's not unique to the Arab world. I think we are finding one of the themes of yesterday was, that the consolidated democracies are struggling a bit with their own leadership insufficiencies in some ways because of polarization of domestic politics or of institutions that are really no longer relevant to modern requirements, etc. Moises Naim has a new book about the end of power and how power is, we have to rethink, and leadership, traditional concepts of leadership, I think, assume that power gets concentrated in an executive branch of a functioning government. And so I don't think it's reasonable to say that this is somehow an Arab world problem. It's actually a global problem. But I think we want to just be careful here that, if we think of leadership as requiring authority, legitimacy, and capacity, and maybe there's some other attributes, in some Arab countries, you've got at least 2 out of 3. You may not have perfect leaders, but think of the King of Saudi Arabia. Now it's an old man who doesn't, has health problems, but he has legitimacy. Some of the Arab monarchies have retained legitimacy. They've retained, some capacity to manage resources, to distribute services to their citizens, etc. So, let's just not forget that there are Arab countries that did not go through an Arab transition, and citizens may not be totally satisfied, but they are not in a revolutionary state. So I want us to differentiate. I thought that the way you posed the question suggested that somehow the Arab world collectively, and I think you meant more at the national level, not at the regional level. Yeah.
Yeah, it is really hard to say whether there is single Arab Spring or multiple Arab Springs going on at the same time. And also, as you just said, it is very difficult to say the Arab world because there is great diversity. So I think the lesson is very clear. We need to be attentive to the diversity in the causes and degrees and nature of leadership deficit in different parts of the Arab world. Otherwise, I mean, it may be very dangerous to have very uniform idea what the Arab Spring is and what Arab leadership deficit is. Let me now ask questions in a more straightforward way because the original question involves exercise in fortune telling. So, what do you feel the leadership vacuum, and who will emerge and take the lead, Mr. Berger?
You mean in the Arab world in general, or in a specific country?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, you can pick. You can choose a country if you like.
Look, as I said before, I think it's extremely difficult at this stage to predict this. It's a long, drawn-out process. I mean, I mentioned early on the revolutions in Europe in 1848. I mean, it took Europe 100 years until 1948 to have a majority of democratic countries, and then some of them were taken over by communism. So another 40 years. So I think it's a generational issue, and it will pan out most likely in the end. There will be a democratic process. It will be done on the basis of a democratic system. When you look at the situation today, you see that the Muslim Brotherhood in many of the countries are a very strong political force. Now, are they a strong political force because they have been oppressed for 60 years, or are they a strong political force because what they do and what they say resonates in society? It's, I think, again, difficult to say at this stage. That for me, the elections that happened a year ago were important, but even more important will be the elections that happen in 4 years from now. Because in 4 years from now, we will see, will there be free and fair elections on the basis of a democratic system? And we will see how will people in the end really vote. And you see already today that there's a lot of disenchantment with the people who took power in 2011. And there is this disenchantment, A, because they have not delivered on what they have promised, and B, and this is quite interesting, we were talking at the moment early on about the people who started the revolution in, for example, in Egypt in January 2011. Where are they? I mean, you have many other people out there now, but many of the people who were on Tahrir Square on the 25th of January 2011 are not to be seen anywhere. Where have they gone? Will they come back? I mean, you see it occasionally when people are unhappy with decisions that are taken by the president. You see, again, demonstrations and the same people are coming back. But it's not a movement. So again, it's very difficult to say whether this will congeal into a movement and then that it will take power and will be opposing any other direction or not. Again, I think important thing is there is a democratic development. There will be free and fair elections in the next period, and then I think it will be easier to answer this question.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. So you think that democratic leadership will emerge in the end, and you think that it'll take generations for democratic leadership to emerge?
I wouldn't say generations, but it will take time.
But take a long time. Would you agree, Mr. Elhalawani?
Well, I absolutely agree. Of course, it's what has been initiated, what has been happening let me just confine myself within Egypt. What's happening in Egypt is historic, as I just told you. Egypt, I couldn't say that Mubarak was a dictator in the exact meaning of dictatorship. We enjoyed very much margin of expression, freedom, and its vibrant sort of civil society and stuff. Actually, what led to the revolution itself in like 10 to 15 years. But the thing is that things need time. We are not accustomed that much actually to sort of competing conflicts. Everything was just settled and arranged for us. You don't need even to go to elections. You don't need to go to ballots just to get you to say your vote or something. So what is happening now that all of a sudden things changed and people are now feeling a little bit disoriented and they do not know what exactly going on and what is the next phase is. So graduation is the name of the game here. Things should just take its time. Now people chose the political Islam or the Brotherhood, and now they are seeing the achievements on the ground. Probably next time they're gonna somehow remodify their choices in a better way. We now learning that no faction can just lead this huge nation. Individually, they have just to cooperate, to sit together, to agree that even they will disagree. To know that nobody should. There's no winner and loser at the whole situation. Everybody should be a little bit. There is some sort of compromise should be settled. So I think this is a process, as the Americans say. It's a process. It takes time. So now I believe that we're on the right track. Probably just backlashes here. Problem there, but the thing is that we're on the right track. People just, for the first time, probably imposed their will, and it's sort of the whole process, the whole experience would correct itself normally. So just about time.
Okay, to make sure that I understand you correctly, so you don't predict relapse into military rule,
not at all,
or victory of, say, theocracy over democracy. You don't see that?
Not at all, not at all.
And what kind of time frame do you have for...
Time frame? Well, I believe that, what's been taken 10 years in the past would take probably a month in the time being.
Thanks to Facebook.
Thanks to Facebook and social media and everything. The life we're living is drastically different in terms of time. So things are moving quite easily and quite quickly in terms of evolution in Egypt. It didn't take much of time actually for Egyptians to believe that there is a huge difference between rhetorics, between just slogans and achieving on the ground. People started to believe very quickly as well that they have to sit with each other and negotiate and compromise. The time frame, in my assessment, would be within a couple of years.
This is very interesting. Mr. Berger had the long-term view, whereas Mr. Elhalawani had much short-term view.
Right.
I don't know where the difference comes from. Maybe generation.
Actually, we have to sit and to agree. That's what I'm saying. We have to find a compromise.
Okay, now I'd like to ask a second question from the list to Ms. Laipson. The question was simply whether it will be political Islam to take the leadership or to rise to the place of prominence. So rather than asking the question, I'd like to rephrase it and ask Ms. Ellen Laipson. Sometimes I change Ms. with Mrs. and Mr. But I'd like to make a prediction about political Islam in the Middle East or maybe in a specific country. Because I think the organizer of this panel must have thought that political Islam is a very powerful political force, maybe shaping the future of the Middle East. I'd like to know what do you think about the future of Islam?
I don't think there's any doubt that political Islam has been the discourse of opposition during the years of authoritarianism, and that it has emerged in at least several countries as the largest single political force. I think that the Islamists may regret having had such an early success after the fall of the authoritarians because they're not delivering, and I think they will find that they get fewer votes the next time around. I think that there is dissatisfaction, and I don't assume that the Muslim Brothers in Egypt and the Nahda in Tunisia are necessarily enjoy majority support in the societies. I think they are the plurality. They probably, in both cases, enjoy somewhere between 25 and 40% of the support of the society, but they are certainly now the single largest force. But I think they will face competition. They have to resolve some of their internal differences. But the new factor is that Islamists that were not politicized, these Salafis, these social movements that focus mostly on kind of personal piety, kind of non-political behavior, they want to get in the game now. And they are putting a lot of pressure on these more moderate Islamist forces to become more doctrinaire, to become more black and white in their sense of what public policy is supposed to be. So I actually worry that this debate over, the continuum of more severe Islamic views that are not 100% compatible with democracy and a more flexible, moderate political Islam that can certainly be reconciled with democracy, that debate is going to harm the confidence that people in the Middle East have about whether they are truly on the democratic path or not. There will be an anxiety that the Islamists, in fact, are not truly devoted to real democracy, and I think it's in some cases true. And I think that the region could be prone to the emergence of kind of charismatic populism, some figure that doesn't come out of a political party but captures the imagination. And then are we back on a track towards strongman rule? It doesn't have to be military, it doesn't have to be in a uniform, but is that what after a period of chaos and uncertainty, will there be a swing in that direction? So I'm not 100% sure that most Arab states will be democratic in a generation. I think it'll probably take longer than that. And I think there will be some magnetic pull to very different models that are that would not meet the sort of international standard of modern democracy.
Thank you. Mr. Berger, would you like to add?
I think I agree. I mean, you have different forms of democracy across the world. Maybe the Arab world will find to its own form of democracy, but I think by and large it will go down that track, and we can see it already now. I mean, there have been constitutions written in countries that have gone through the transition period. Elections have been held already. There is a strong civil society. So I think all these elements are already there, but I think they all have to come together. And what I mean, that will take most likely some time.
Okay, I'm getting the sign that we have only 5 minutes left. So we need to open up for discussion from the floor, please. Gentlemen.
Okay, I'm Chiang from the Asan Institute. My question goes to Mr. Berger and Ms. Laipson, and it's about the 4 regional players again. I mean, that idea just stuck with me since last night. I mean, after we had a panel about the Syria and the international community. So my question is that what kind of incentives can be given to Iran to give up the Assad regime and to accept the post-Assad, Syria building, design?
I don't think it's up to the international community. I think Iran will see that it's in its interest to adapt if Assad presumably falls at some point. I don't think any of us know exactly when that will be. Iran will be looking after its own interests and will want to have a relationship with whatever government emerges in Syria. I'm not sure that the task is for us to try to persuade Iran. I think we would like to, I think there has been an unwillingness so far to engage Iran on the future of Syria. But I don't think it's a question of us providing them incentives.
So right now, we don't see any changes for Iran to change their preference, right?
Well, I think that our friend from Tehran believes that, that Iran is already, like Russia, I believe, that I expect that there's a public position and that privately people are considering alternatives and preparing for the possibility of change. That's the most I can say.
The gentleman?
My name is Khalid, I'm from UAE. I have more a remark than it is really questions. What we are facing today in the Arab world, in the Arab Spring, is not a leadership deficit, it's a total system of democratic system deficit. Neither the people, the citizen, neither the leadership, they have the culture today of democracy. The problem today is the people we have after the Arab Spring, we have government, but we don't have governance. Today we have we see that as the government is fully functional, but there is no control. So governance is not there. I mean, if you take the Muslim Brotherhood, most of them, they came from the jail. It's not a shame for them. But, they never have been even, any one of them, not even an ambassador before. So they don't have completely any idea how to lead the countries and how to lead the people. And this Arab, what you call in this international world order. This is one thing. The culture of the people today, if you see especially in the Egyptian, and maybe Mohammad, you can correct me, brother, is people, they misunderstand democracy. If you see the debate in the TV today, is go to criticize of personal and sometimes really a shame for somebody is very highly dedicated to speak about something. It's nothing to do with democracy. So what is the limit today? In the meantime, unfortunately, I think Ellen, she touched most of the things today. We are facing a cultural problems. And unfortunately today, West, especially the US today, immediately wake up in the morning and they have to implement democracy. It's the same people they are dealing with them about more than 30 years. I have been in the State Department more than 17 times. They never ever talk to us. I came from UAE. We don't have a democracy. Saudi Arabia doesn't have democracies. It's the same people what we are talking to and dealing with. It is the same people today. It was US mainly during the beginning of the any rights uprising. It is against the uprising. After almost 3 weeks, they are talking about democracy, and now they want to teach the people how to do democracy. The other questions, we are in the Muslim countries. We have, and especially in the Arab, we have two issues. One, we have a cultural issues, and we have an Islamic cultures. Arabian cultures, we came, especially in the Gulf, example, from a tribal, leadership, whereas the people, they are loyal to the tribe leaders, and also the people loyal to their king or the president or emir or call it whatever you call it. In the meantime, people also in the Islam have sympathy and have, opinion with their imam or mufti, So today, it's if they leave the people, and instead to intervene in how to reform the democracy in the Arab culture, in the Arab people, and this is now we are in the beginning. I am very optimistic about what's going on. But in the meantime, we don't want to repeat the Khilafah. I don't know if this is clear for a lot of people or not. Today is Khilafah Islamiyah, is the Muslim Brotherhood we're looking, is what we have is in Iran. Iran today is Khilafah, that means the Imam or the leader people, they reflect the commitment of Allah on the ground, okay? And there's no democracy. We are deciding exactly what is the nation and the people because we have in the behalf of the Quran or Sunnah, or we call it whatever you call it, we are in charge to give the people a certain margin to talk about and to do things. But is it real democracy? No. So today, we are going to shape also, this is with the Muslim Brotherhood, is the same like what we have today in Iran. Can be very dangerous and not a good. And if this it's going to be like this, that means the Muslim Brotherhood, they will never ever leave, the leadership, position. I don't want to take long, but I think today, both sides, neither leadership nor the citizens is really have the culture to work together and also the culture for real democratic issues. We are reforming. It will take time, and maybe take long time. When I say time, it will take generation maybe to really settle down. I agree with our friend from Europe that it will take,
Thank you for your thoughtful comments. We run out of time, but can you ask your question in 10 seconds?
10 seconds?
Yeah.
Oh, my remarks are similar to his.
Oh, okay. What?
He said the leaders are people already. Said leaders are people. There. So there's no deficit of the leadership. And you, Mr. Berger, asked, where are all the people at the Tahrir Square?
Yeah.
So I want to make a separation. People who didn't like the original system, the dictatorship, they revolted because they didn't like it. But that's the revolution. But on the other hand, choosing what to do after the revolution and going for the leadership is leading to another way. Revolution is moving away from an original system. That may be a revolution, people who made the revolution. But I think after the revolution, when they are not moving away from the original system, but creating a new system, that is a different story. So if you think, after that, I think both of you were kind of optimistic, being optimistic. Am I getting so long?
Thank you, the panelists, and also the audience for your contribution. May Arab Spring succeed. Thank you.
Well said.